Kuahu, standing behind Chen Fan, looking down at his legs, which could now stand straight. His eyes instantly turned red, and he said in a trembling voice, "I'm not crippled anymore. Not crippled anymore." Some of the originally crippled members of the breeding outskirts, now at the broken limbs, had new flesh buds growing back, and before long, the broken limbs regenerated, while some older members of the breeding outskirts had their silver hair suddenly turn black strand by strand, and the wrinkles on their faces faded considerably. That was a faint roar. Why was excitedly rolling in the golden fish water, scales and armor constantly falling off, and quickly growing a new set of golden scales. This was it. Golden rain pouring over the entire new continent. Chen Fan stood on the city wall, gazing at the scene before him. Big fish, if I asked you to leave Fan Yu, he finally understood what the reward for ruling the world was. Normally speaking, to spread might across an entire continent could only be accomplished after thoroughly driving away the ghost lair. At that time, this golden rain would repair all the mountains destroyed on this continent. Rivers would heal everyone's injuries and extend everyone's lifespan, like a victorious golden rain, bringing new life to this war-torn continent. This golden rain should fall at the end of a great battle, but beyond that, he looked into the depths of his soul, at the inner marsh panel that popped up on the Yen Yi Lord panel. If this golden rain was the reward for the entire continent, then the marsh panel was his personal reward. The two combined were ruling the world. You have lit up all regions of a continent. Ghost Fire receives a special reward, ruling the world. Over the next 3 years, this continent will continuously absorb the energy of the swimming liquid, forming rolling mines and fertile soil. Within 3 years, this continent will not be invaded by the ghost lair. Chen Fan stood on the city wall, looking into the distance, silently watching this golden rain. Why did that pillar of ash Kevin Incense say that if there was enough time, he finally understood the true reward of ruling the world was the 3-year period of peace and stability, granted after a great battle ended. During these 3 years, this continent could develop rapidly, restoring its former prosperity, and would not be invaded by the ghost lair. He didn't know how many ghost mines would form, but he was sure it wouldn't be a small number. Was it worth it? He felt it was. As for what was most important now, he contacted Wang Kui through the signal tower installed in the undersea tunnel. "Jike, bring all the breeding members." He pulled a transmission talisman from his chest. Speed is crucial. This rain can extend lifespan and heal injuries. It's a great opportunity not to be missed. He didn't know how long this golden rain would last, but he decided to let all the breeding members come first. As for the Janbei defense line, it could operate fully automatically. And during normal rainy seasons, few people needed to stay at the breeding grounds. After this order was given, the breeding grounds began to stir. High-speed trains loaded with breeding members rushed quickly toward the undersea tunnel. This was the first time many breeding members stepped into the undersea tunnel. The new continent had always been the highest secret in the breeding grounds, although many breeding members had vaguely guessed something. No one had witnessed it firsthand. After giving all these instructions, Chen Fang continued to stand on the city wall, gazing at this golden rain. This golden rain should have fallen only after repelling the ghost nest and subduing all continents. 3 years of safety meant that even after repelling the ghost nest on this vast ocean, there were still many enemies watching them covetously. These 3 years of safety might be the greatest reward. Are there many enemies? He looked toward the distant sea surface, at the hundreds of islands lit by ghost fire. Perhaps that is the greatest reward. Are there many enemies? He gazed out at the distant sea, at the hundreds of islands lit by ghostly flames. Puzzled by this, 3 years, he could sense that after obtaining the reward of world-dominating presence, he had vaguely formed a connection with a new continent. For instance, he could now faintly perceive that the continent, which had been crumbling due to the loss of the heavenly Dao, some repairing the walls, its fissures were being rapidly repaired under this golden rain. In other words, this continent would not collapse again for a long time. It would become their great rear base. 2 hours later, members of the breeding ground arrived one after another. Stepping out of the platform, they saw this golden rain that enveloped the entire new continent, and beheld the myriad stars in the sky. That golden rain falling from the stars. All members of the breeding ground were extremely excited. They could clearly feel that all their hidden ailments had been restored. Besides the members of the breeding ground, there were also the families of its outer members, etc. They too arrived in carts, one after another, bathing in this golden rain, which extended everyone's lifespan. After a day and a night, this golden rain gradually stopped. Endless darkness once again enveloped the sky above the new continent. The myriad stars were obscured as usual. The 170,000 ghost fires laid out on the new continent had all shattered in unison. But the entire new continent was now shrouded by a giant golden eggshell. Although the ghost fires had shattered, the range they provided was preserved and merged into one. Chen Fang could sense that this ghost fire enveloping the entire new continent would last for 3 years. Within these 3 years, the new continent would not suffer ghostly invasions, though during these days, he hadn't seen any ghost tombs invading anyway. After the eternal night descended, one could see wisps of darkness, like ink drops into clear water, piercing through this giant ghost fire eggshell, falling onto the new continent's ground and gradually forming ghost mines that needed no digging, only picking up. And these naturally formed ghost mines would last for 3 years. With such abundant resources, the breeding ground would usher in faster development. This rainy season was as ordinary as ever, and all core members of the breeding ground quietly enjoyed it. Because everyone knew this might be their last moment of peace, and the last peaceful rainy season they would experience. Thus, a year passed quickly. Xianxia stood on the Jianbei defense line, holding a jade hand scroll with one hand, gazing at the turbulent Dead Sea in the distance. It had been a year since the breeding ground obtained the world-dominating presence reward. Now, it was the end of October in the 382nd year of the Eternal Night calendar, only a few days until this year's rainy season. This year's rainy season would not be ordinary. It would be the moment when that aura dissipated, and the seabed ghost nest landed. A Jianbei defensive line stretching 170 kilometers, standing on the Jianbei coastline. Many members of the breeding ground were busy preparing, making final arrangements for the coming ghost tide. 4 years. Chen Fan exhaled a long puff of white mist. The weather was gradually turning cold, colder than usual. A bit earlier, it had been over 4 years since he came to this world. 4 years ago, he learned that the seabed ghost nest in Jianbei was about to land. These 4 years, he had been preparing for it. Now, this moment had finally arrived. The entire breeding ground was mobilized, united for this battle. Prison Master Wang Qi strode to Chen Fan's side, looking down at the notebook in his hand. We just had it checked. All the turrets and spirit soul sculptures on the Jianbei defense line are in their designated positions, undamaged. There are 100 spare spirit soul sculptures in the rear, ready to be deployed at any time. His gaze lingered on the plain, behind Mount Wuming. A total of 200 altars are all in normal condition, capable of providing sufficient repairs for the Jianbei defense line. And now, the breeding ground's reserve ghost stones have reached 7.8 billion. Chen Fan nodded lightly. Originally, there wouldn't be this many ghost stones in reserve. If we only mine the new continent, we couldn't mine this many ghost stones in a single year. But after obtaining the rewards from ruling the world, the ghost mines naturally born from ruling the world, in just 1 year, produced over 3 billion ghost stones for them. They've already recouped their investment. There's one more thing. Wang Qi will continue to report. The Jianbei defense line is a full 170 kilometers long. We need a large number of hands to be like defense line No. 7. After fending off the ghost nests every night, collecting ghost house corpses from various cities and excavating ghost stones. But we currently lack manpower. If we want to recruit and breed a large number of outer members, before Wang Qi could finish, Chen Fan interrupted him. No need to recruit. Issue a notice. Let all forces from the 4 Jianbei regions in the Guangxi Plain send their people to provide support. They will mainly handle logistics and post-battle collection work. Won't there be problems with people who aren't ours? Wang Qi hesitated. No. Chen Fan shook his head. Let the leader of each force personally manage their own people and supervise them. If anything goes wrong, we'll hold the force leader accountable. They handle supervision and management on a daily basis anyway. That's what they're good at. This will greatly reduce incidents like pocketing ghost stones for themselves. Though, understood. Chen Fan watched Wang Qi's retreating figure, placed his hands on the parapet of the Jianbei defense line, let out a long breath, then focused his mind. The ghost stones stored in the breeding warehouse suddenly shattered in an instant, turning into milky white liquid that surged along the copper pipes toward the Jianbei defense line. The Jianbei defense line began to light up in sequence like dominoes, each section illuminated in unison. The city walls rose in order. With the support of 850 million ghost stones, the Jianbei defense line's originally uniform level 5 walls were now all upgraded to level 6. Panels kept popping up before him. City wall upgraded to level 6. Increased durability and strength. Please choose an upgrade direction. 1. The wall can self-destruct, unleashing tremendous power. Power depends on the wall's sturdiness and level. 2. Enemies attacking the wall at close range have a low chance of suffering damage reflection. 3. Enemies attacking the wall from a distance will deal reduced damage to the wall. He swiped through each panel one by one, uniformly selecting the third option. Occasionally, a special upgrade direction would pop up, but they were all useless. If that special direction happened to appear as the third option, he would have to dismantle that wall and rebuild a level 6 wall to seal the gap. Those special upgrade directions that only affected a single wall, not all connected walls, were all useless. Before lying, the completely renewed Jianbei defense line stood under the setting sun, along the Jianbei coastline. Uniform level 6 walls. matching the scale of defense line No. 7, but with longer and harder ghost vein patterns than No. 7. This should be enough now. To work, Wuxia Plain. The Sacred Lord of the Immortal Slaying Sacred Land looked down at the letter in his hand, then leaped from his bed and strode out of the room. The Jiangbei monsoon season is about to descend, grinning widely, about to land on the Jiangbei 100-mile defense line. Urgently need hands. Special summons from Feather Seat Play Zhu Fangfren, see the man. Ever quiet the Jiangbei breeding eternal enterprise. Year 382, month 10, day 27. Stepping outside, the Sacred Lord of the Immortal Slaying Sacred Land gazed at the assembled disciples of the Immortal Slaying Sacred Land, already standing ready in the courtyard. He nodded with satisfaction, waved his hand grandly, and said, "Move out." Countless ghost stones were carried to the high-speed rail at the foot of the mountain. Disciples of the Immortal Slaying Sacred Land, clad in black, also followed with swords at their sides. They had been ready for a long time, just waiting for the breeding ground to issue the call to arms. The next moment, the foreign village ghost stone was moved onto the high-speed rail at the foot of the mountain. Disciples of the Immortal Slaying Sacred Ground, all clad in black robes, also followed with their blades slanted, ready long ago. They were just waiting for Fine Yu to issue the call to the Jianghu. Then he responded at the first moment. These past few days, the propagation sect announced that Jiangbei and the tide of the sea was about to land. Only then did the various forces of the Guanxi Plain learn that the node in Jiangbei had long since shattered. They also finally learned why the Jiangbei propagation sect had spent a fortune to build the Jiangbei defense line. In an instant, countless forces responded. High-speed trains loaded with strong men and ghost stones from the 4 regions of Jiangbei and the Guanxi Plain sped toward the propagation sect. It wasn't just out of admiration for Jianbei's actions. More than that, it was because the propagation sect could act. If you dared not go to the propagation sect, they truly dared to come to you. The Jiangbei defense line isn't even considered a secondary line. Chen Fan, standing on the city wall staring blankly at the sea, heard a familiar yet unfamiliar voice in his ear. He turned his head to look. Old Seven was striding toward him. "How are the preparations going? Whether we can protect Jiangbei depends on these next few days." Old Seven's face showed little worry, especially after seeing that the city wall's height was no longer 20 meters, but 30 meters. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly. It would be a miracle if this Jiangbei defense line could be breached. Chen Fan stood on the wall, letting the sea breeze blow, and said with a smile, "Any news about the Eternal Night Front lately?" He didn't have much of a source for news about the Eternal Night Front. It mainly came through Old Seven. "It's okay," Old Seven sighed deeply. "Last rainy season, another position on the Eternal Night Front fell. But after the rainy season, we took it back. The main issue is during the rainy season, the pressure on the Eternal Night Front is greater. On normal days, it's manageable. All we can do is hold our own little patch of land. The rest has to be left to the Eternal Night Front. If the Eternal Night Front truly breaks, then we'll have no choice but to accept our fate." Chen Fan nodded lightly. "By the way," Old Seven suddenly looked around with some confusion, "didn't your propagation sect recruit more people? Your Jiangbei defense line is a full 170 kilometers long. If you don't recruit more people, the cleanup work after the battle won't be easy." Defense Line 7 had hundreds of thousands of people, and more than half of them were responsible for post-battle cleanup. The defense line's main source of ghost stone income is exactly that. The ghost stones collected after the battle. It should be enough. Chen Fan hesitated. "I sent out a notice, acting like a major power recruiting disciples. I asked them to send some people. That should be about enough." "That won't do at all." Old Seven's face immediately darkened, his brows tightly furrowed. "Chen Fan, I'm telling you, you're thinking too well of the forces in the 4 regions of Jiangbei and the 2 plains of Guanxi. They won't respond just because you send out a recruitment notice, even if they know the Jiangbei defense line is protecting them, until the ghost nest is right at their doorstep. They won't appreciate your efforts. Is that so?" Chen Fan heard the whistle of a high-speed train behind him, turned to look back, and upon seeing the scene, suddenly laughed. "Look, they're here." Old Seven followed Chen Fan's gaze and looked behind him. In the wasteland behind the Jiangbei defense line, several high-speed rail tracks and 7 or 8 high-speed trains were running side by side on the tracks. They sped across the wasteland and soon arrived beneath the Jiangbei defense line. The first train came to a stop. Hundreds of people stepped off the train, and they continuously carried boxes of ghost stones down. Leading them was none other than the Saint Lord of the Two Zion Sacred Land. He stood at the base of the city wall, cupped his fists, and looked up at Chen Fan and the wall, grinning as he roared, "Two Zion Sacred Land, Disciple No. 729, receiving your command, bringing 3 months' worth of dry rations, and supporting 5 million ghost stones, seeking only a battle. For Jiangbei, for Guanxi, thank you." Chen Fan, standing on the wall, cupped his fists, and returned the salute. Old Seven, standing nearby, trembled slightly, only then realizing The Saint Lord of the Two Zion Sacred Land has always been a man of great vision. Last time, he supported Defense Line 7 with 5 million ghost stones. But as for the other forces before he could finish, but before the words had even faded, the other factions, several more people also got off the remaining high-speed trains. All of them carried ghost stones. The able-bodied young men of the 7th branch of the Janbei Lai family had all arrived, awaiting Ren Pingfan's deployment. All 3,000 followers of the Plane of Guangxi's name-revering sect were present. Ren Pingfan deployed them. All disciples of the Jan and Metzin King Valley had arrived, awaiting Ren Pingfan's orders. More and more forces from the Plane of Guangxi were rushing over, and at the edge of the Janbei wasteland, even more high-speed trains could be seen, racing toward them without pause. The 7 elders stared at the scene before them, utterly stunned. Last time they recruited, not so many forces had answered the call. They couldn't help but turn their heads toward Chen Fan, and muttered instinctively, "Tao, Tao, so many answered your recruitment call. Maybe it's because the recruiters are good." Chen Fan smiled. After thanking each one, Wang Kui stepped forward, leading the recruitment members to begin distributing transmission talismans to the leaders of every force that had come to support. They also assigned defense sections based on personnel arrangements. The 7 elders didn't linger long. After watching a while longer, they took the recruitment high-speed train back to Defense Line No. 7. After all, the rainy season was about to descend, and Defense Line No. 7 had plenty of matters to handle. The eternal night continent, in a certain region perpetually shrouded in darkness, a man and 2 beasts sat in the heart of the gloom. The middle-aged man in the gray robe had grown increasingly restless these past days, constantly turning his head toward the direction of Janbei. Though he could see nothing, he still instinctively kept looking toward Janbei. He could clearly sense that the aura he had left in Janbei was about to extinguish in a few days. The massive ghost nests in Janbei, which his aura had suppressed beneath the sea, were about to land. Just then, from within the darkness came a voice, somewhat aged and weary. "Sir, are you truly still unwilling to speak? If you leave now, you can return to Janbei and continue guarding your Janbei. Do you truly wish to see countless lives in Janbei die because of you?" The middle-aged man, whose mind had been somewhat agitated, fell silent upon hearing this, lowering his head in a long pause. After a long while, he spoke softly, "Janbei's countless lives will not die because of me, but because of you." He did have feelings for Janbei. Back then, his first step upon arriving in the Eternal Night Continent had been Janbei. It was the people of Janbei who had fished him out of the sea and given him a meal. He had never possessed such a thing as emotion before, but since his last self-destruction, he had gradually gained feelings. Yet some matters were matters of principle. If the ghost race were to learn the exact location of the continent he had once been on, and they truly managed to cross the thunderstorm sea, then for the Eternal Night Continent, it would be a death sentence. That continent was already on the verge of collapse. If the ghost race wanted to inhabit a continent, they had to find an intact one. The Eternal Night Continent remained their primary target, and by consuming the vast ghost stones on that continent, they would greatly enhance their strength, making the Eternal Night Continent even less able to resist. The two sides had broken off talks once again. For a time, this space shrouded in darkness fell back into silence. After an unknown time, from the darkness came that hoarse voice again. "You're not the heavenly Dao of this continent. What exactly are you after? Whether the Eternal Night Continent wins or loses, you won't die. No one can kill you, and no one will kill you. Do you truly want to be imprisoned here forever?" As his words fell, the middle-aged man, who had been staring blankly at the ground, "Big fish, if I asked you to leave Fan Yu," raising their heads to look upward, his gaze piercing through the darkness, and locking firmly onto a certain spot. "Mind your own business. I'm happy this way. Ever since I gained a little more emotion than before, I've realized that not everything needs to be thought through so clearly. As long as I'm happy, that's fine." The darkness fell silent once more, and the two beasts, who usually bickered constantly, now stopped their roughhousing, lying on the ground and gazing toward Janbei, both lost in a daze. They wondered if Little Flower had managed to escape from Nameless Mountain. If he hadn't fled, the day the seabed ghost nests land north of the river will be the day Little Flower dies. What they fear most is Little Flower insisting on staying at Wooming Mountain to wait for their return, even refusing to retreat when the ghost nests have already landed. If that's the case, the two of them would struggle to crack a smile for the rest of their lives. Meanwhile, Eternal night descends on schedule. The Yellow Spring Pass Canyon is ablaze with lights tonight, and the Yellow Spring Pass defense line, battery after battery, aims into the darkness of the Guangxi Plains. Many people scurry back and forth along the city wall. Meanwhile, the person in charge of Yellow Spring Pass stares grimly into the depths of the Guangxi Plains. A few days later, countless seabed ghost nests will land from north of the river. At that time, the 4 lands north of the river and the 2 lands west of the pass will be stripped of all life. All landed ghost nests will charge toward the Yellow Spring Pass defense line. The Yellow Spring Pass defense line has been fully constructed for over 2 years. Finally, Now is the time for it to prove its worth. The seventh elder still not withdrawn. He can't help but turn his head to the woman beside him. No, the woman shakes her head. The last message 7th Elder sent us was that defense line 7 will hold the Guandan plains to the death. And one sentence I couldn't understand. What sentence? Troubled times breed heroes, suffering breeds miracles. Someone guards the north of the river. The north of the river will not fall. Someone guards the north of the river. The middle-aged man's brow furrows deeply. What does it mean? Someone guards the north of the river. The only one who can guard an entire region alone is that person. No one else has that power. I've never seen anyone who can single-handedly hold a region. But if we're talking about factions, the Eternal Night Hall hasn't sent any reinforcements, meaning the force has risen in the 4 lands north of the river and the 2 lands west of the pass, capable of guarding the north of the river. Did he say anything else? Nothing, but his tone didn't sound too desperate, more like full of confidence. The middle-aged man is silent for a long time before speaking in a low, hoarse voice. Then let's see if any ghost nests reach the base of the Yellow Spring Pass defense line. After the rainy season begins, 10 ticks forward. At the base of the 170-kilometer long north of the river defense wall, 3 high-speed rail tracks have been built. These 3 tracks will handle wartime logistics, rapid resupply, and collection of ghost nest corpses. Each faction has received its assigned section. They will be responsible for coast battle cleanup within this section's wall perimeter. Supervisors are the leaders of each faction, along with some breeding division members. All ghost stones excavated will be reinvested into the north of the river defense line. After all, the seabed ghost nest landing won't end in one night, or even one rainy season. It will be a continuous battle. As long as the defense line doesn't fall, the fighting goes on. 3 years, 5 years, even 10 years is possible. During this time, the batteries on the north of the river defense line will remain active constantly. Ghost stones will drain like flowing water. Relying solely on the breeding division's stockpile will deplete it in no time. The main source of ghost stones will be those excavated during post-battle cleanup. Near dusk, rain drizzles down onto the north of the river defense line. The breeding division members on the line and people from various factions all huddle nervously behind the city wall, gazing at the surging waves ahead. The sea water grows ever larger. Few have personally been to Defense Line 7. Few have witnessed ghost nests landing with their own eyes. This is everyone's first time, so tension is inevitable. Chen Fan stands by the harbor, looking at the hundreds of pillars towering on the wasteland near the port. This seabed ghost nest landing, if the intensity doesn't change, shouldn't require these towering pillars. It's been nearly 2 years since the Earth Meridian Line was open. In these 2 years, many towering pillars have been fully charged. Within these 2 years, a large number of heaven-piercing pillars have completed their energy storage. Among them, 96 of the full-level heaven-piercing pillars had already been fully charged. He still hadn't tested the power of a full-level heaven-piercing pillar. When he got the chance, he'd throw one to see its might. After making another round of inspection, he, like the others, ascended the city wall. Gazing at the distant sea under the twilight, he began to wait patiently. Finally, when eternal night descended, and boundless darkness swept in from the horizon, completely shrouding the entire Janbei region, Chen Fan vaguely sensed a cracking sound coming from Nameless Mountain. The next moment, before the Janbei defense line, the ceaselessly churning sound of the waves vanished instantly, as if the entire ocean had been drained of its voice. The seawater suddenly turned into an extreme stillness, a stillness they had never seen before. Then, the reefs along the shore began to tremble faintly. It wasn't an earthquake, but a rhythmic vibration, transmitted from the deep sea upward, as if countless ghost nests, long dormant, had awakened at the bottom of the sea, and were turning around, causing this disturbance. The sea surface remained pitch black like ink, but soon began to ooze large patches of a viscous, dark green liquid. The first ghost nest broke through the sea surface. Standing on the Janbei defense line, Chen Fan narrowed his eyes. He saw it, the ghost nest resembling an octopus, with no legs, its base a mass of writhing tentacles. But this was merely the prelude. Like the opening chapter of a story, the true horror followed close behind. At that moment, the sea level suddenly rose as a whole. An extremely terrifying wave surged up, crushed heavily against the Janbei defense line. As countless splashes flew up, innumerable ghost nests rode the spray, like a black tide, with an unstoppable momentum, in the blink of an eye covering the entire Janbei coastline. The ghost nest was coming. Countless roars erupted along the northern defense line. The ghost nest, suppressed at the bottom of the Janbei Sea for centuries, the moment that aura dissipated, began to waken and land. But what awaited them was not a delicious meal. The unguarded Janbei defense line had been waiting long. Chen Fan stood on the Janbei defense line, staring fixedly at the coastline ahead. By now, a massive horde of ghost creatures surged from the seawater, covering the coastline densely, and rushed toward the Janbei defense line. Their speed was not fast, but the pressure they brought was nearly suffocating. Even though he knew that his Janbei defense line was already impossible to breach, seeing this scene, he still couldn't help holding his breath, partly from shock, partly because the stench was unbearable. The almost tangible stench shot straight to his crown chakra. Just then, a bolt of lightning suddenly split the sky, and a massive wave crashed heavily onto the shore. When the lightning faded, and the spray receded, the number of ghost nests on the coast had shockingly multiplied several times over. Densely packed ghost nests nearly covered the entire Janbei coastline. Occasionally, a few enormous ones could be seen, gripping weapons, roaring with frenzied expressions, striding heavily toward the Janbei defense line. Fearless of death, along the way, they trampled many ordinary ghost nests to death. Whether big ghosts or small ghosts, all had cast life and death aside. Ghost nests had no intelligence to speak of. Chen Fan let out a light breath, activated the clear wind formation within the ghost fire, allowing the people on the wall to move a bit faster, while also slightly driving away some of the stench. The next moment, in the Janbei defense line, a full 8,500 spirit cannon were activated almost simultaneously. In an instant, 8,500 scarlet energy shells landed among the ghost nests. Countless deafening explosions converged together, as if the earth itself were collapsing. The explosion dust, mixed with ghost nest fragments and seawater, flew into the air, spilling scarlet energy. Like pythons, they transformed into wisps that rapidly surged in all directions. The volley of 8,500 divine artillery pieces, this power surpasses anything any heaven-piercing Tilla could unleash. Positioned along that 170-kilometer long northern river defense line, the volley of 8,500 divine artillery pieces nearly blanketed the entire northern river coastline. It covered the whole area. This region, stretching 170 kilometers, had now become a domain of death. With just a single volley, the first wave of ghost nests to land, including the greater ghosts, were completely cleared out. Scarcely a single one slipped through the net, but the truly terrifying aspect of the ghost nests landing from the seabed was their near-infinite numbers. When the waves surged again, even more ghost nests rode the tide ashore. Chen Fan gazed at the ghost nests before him, unable to even clearly make out a single ghost nest form. The sheer quantity was overwhelming. He struggled to lock his gaze onto a single lesser ghost, as it would soon be crushed beneath other ghost nests, and to such numbers, precision strikes were meaningless. A single star-red cannon shell landed precisely amidst this cluster of ghost nests. Countless star-red energies shot out in all directions like blood pythons, clearing another patch once more. And left, it looked rather satisfying, and the blood of these slain ghost nests was being rapidly absorbed by the ghost cave cadence along the 170-kilometer northern river defense line. Uniformly, the ghost blood patterns flickered with star-red light, appearing extremely eerie in the night. Boom, boom, boom. This 4-year war had finally officially begun. This was not a war that would end quickly. Rather, as long as the northern river defense line was not breached, it would be a war that persisted indefinitely. The deafening explosions formed the main theme of this war. Countless exploding star-red energy shells stunned and filled the entire northern river coastline. At the end of the northern river defense line, the disciple of the immortal slaying sacred land pressed against the mountain range, now gripped his greatsword tightly, staring at the scene below, a flash of terror in his eyes. This sight was something he had never witnessed before. In his entire life, he had never seen so many ghost nests. He dared not imagine what would happen if, without the northern river defense line, this horde of ghost nests charged at him. The only thing he could do, perhaps, was to quickly for his country, stab himself twice in the heart in an instant, ensuring he could die a swift death. But now this horde of ghost nests, fully capable of slaughtering all of Northern River, was being mowed down in droves by the divine artillery, as easily as stepping on a swarm of ants. He looked at the several cannons roaring beside him, the divine artillery, and for the first time truly understood why the Sacred Lord feared procreation so much. He also finally knew why the Sacred Lord had roared about righteousness and dragged him here. Stand with righteousness and you stand with procreation. Oppose righteousness and you stand against procreation. What do you think? The procreation members beside him, upon seeing this, were also somewhat stunned. I told you, didn't I? The unkillable procreation has guarded Northern River for years, forging this defense line. If it were so easily breached, wouldn't all procreation's efforts these years have been in vain? Just then, there, the disciple of the immortal slaying sacred land suddenly changed expression, pointing into the air. Look, from the sea, dozens of bat-like creatures suddenly flew up, arcing through the air, taking a path as undetected as possible, flying toward their heads. The next moment, these dozens of bats dodged rapidly in the air, clearly evading any potential anti-air fire. Locked on, they burst forth with incredible speed, aiming to cross over the Northern River defense line. It looked like they might succeed. The intact anti-air cannons stationed nearby had shown no reaction from start to finish, but just as these dozens of bats entered the airspace above the Northern River defense line, suddenly hovered in midair. No matter how hard it struggled and flapped its wings, it could not advance another inch, as if it had suddenly fallen into thick, sticky swamp. and at that moment, the anti-aircraft cannon stationed on the Janbei defense line only then began to slowly activate. The 12 petals of the anti-aircraft cannon were miraculously lit. From the stamen burst forth a continuous beam of emerald light. In the blink of an eye, those dozens of bats were instantly melted away, and without a trace, the disciples of the slaughter immortal sacred land stood frozen in place, a flicker of confusion in their eyes. The Janbei defense line entered full A-space lockdown. Gods and ghosts launched countermeasures. A member sighed and patted the shoulder of the slaughter immortal sacred land disciple, saying, "See, I told you it was perfectly safe." The battle gradually grew intense. More and more ghost nests, driven by the waves, scattered about. A few lucky ghost tombs flew straight toward the top of the city wall, and some flying ghost tombs with ranged attack abilities hovered hundreds of meters from the Janbei defense line, their wings flapping continuously. With each flap, they condensed a pale green orb of light and blasted it toward the Janbei defense line. In response, the Janbei defense line gave its answer. A total of 1,700 anti-aircraft cannons were miraculously activated. Emerald beams filled the sky, nearly blotting out the heavens. Like countless laser beams slicing through a cake, they cut the entire dome into pieces. Most of the ghost roads driven by the waves toward the city wall were blasted into fragments, along with those flying ghost creatures hovering hundreds of meters from the Janbei defense line. In the air, were also being cleaned up one by one, but there were still some that slipped through, riding the waves to charge onto the wall. K, a member of the breeding battle squad, was diligently guarding his own section of the defense line. As a wave surged in, a ghost creature like an octopus was flung onto the wall by the spray, its pupils flickering with brutality and malice. It leaped into the air and charged at him. Tum and then, the bay-chested man roared loudly, his martial king cultivation base revealed without concealment. He gripped a large blade and leaped into the air as well. Spinning 316 degrees, he swung the heavy blade down at the ghost creature that had climbed the wall. One strike landed. The touch was soft, like punching cotton, but it still split the flesh, spilling plenty of dark green liquid, and at the same time, this octopus-like ghost opened, all its tentacles wrapping around him. In almost an instant, the man's scream tore through the heavens and earth. Countless holes appeared on his body in a flash. He could feel the blood in his body being rapidly drained, but soon he felt a warm liquid splashing onto him. He sensed his injuries and strength quickly recovering. He roared and broke free, striking again with his blade. That warm liquid came again. 1 slash, 2 slashes, after dozens of slashes. This octopus-like ghost creature that had climbed the wall was chopped into minced meat. Looked like it would make a good batch of dumplings. Panting heavily, the man gasped for breath. A bit shaken, he glanced back at the copper pipe behind him that was continuously spraying holy water. Thank goodness for this, or I might have died here just now. K, the breeding member guarding another section nearby, was glaring at him in annoyance. He roared, "I was about to call for backup for you. Can you stop showing off? Put on your armor properly." The man, having survived the ordeal, dared not act cocky now. He quickly grabbed the armor, made by goblins, which he had tossed aside earlier, and draped it over himself, wrapping his body completely. If he had worn this armor earlier, it wouldn't have been so difficult. But this was his first time experiencing such a grand scene. He was really just too excited. Earlier, he even wanted to jump off the defense line and go on a rampage. Behind the Janbei defense line, dozens of fully equipped African ships were constantly patrolling. Once any section of the wall saw a large number of ghost creatures climbing up, they would prepare to provide fire support. Soon, when the roar of artillery finally slowly ceased, and the wood-like liquid gradually receded, wave after wave of ghost tides vanished into the sea. At dawn, the first battle of the seabed ghost tides landing was over. They had all passed. The black mist receded, and the dimly lit sky shrouded the Janbei wasteland. Along the 170-kilometer-long Janbei defense line, a burst of excited roars erupted. Chen Fan, standing on the city wall, gazed at the countless ghost creatures before the Janbei defense line, and smiled at their corpses. It seemed Janbei had truly held after all. It was only the first wave. He had also been a bit tense, keeping watch on the wall the whole time, ready for any emergencies. But there were absolutely no emergencies. The African ships he had prepared for support were never even used. The heaven-piercing pillar was not activated either. He had also prepared ample rail artillery, ready to upgrade the Janbei defense line to level 7 at any moment, but that too went unused. For now, everything was under control. Countless craters blasted by artillery covered the Janbei coastline. Hardly a single ghost corpse was visible, but many ghost stones and treasures lay scattered. The tree paths of the Janbei defense line, with walls embedded into the ground, saw hundreds of thousands of people under command begin orderly sweeping across the Janbei coastline, picking up ghost stones and treasures, and also taking away all the fragments and ghost corpses they could carry. At the moment dawn broke, he also received a transmission from the 7 elders. "Chen Yuzhu, how are things on your end?" "All is well." "That's good." And the other end of the transmission talisman, the 7 elders let out a long sigh of relief. "And so, Time slowly passed until 15 days later. From the initial tension, to now, after 15 consecutive days, Fang Yu had grown accustomed to the seabed ghost nest landings. Even those sent by other factions to support were no longer tense, and had subtly blended in with the Fang Yu members. Seeing familiar faces, they could even smile and greet each other. During these 15 days, not a single ghost creature had breached the Janbei defense line. The Janbei defense line stood firm. It stretched like the sky itself. Casualty rates were also very low. The few casualties were from people sticking their heads out, too absorbed in watching the spectacle, and unfortunately falling off the defense line to their deaths on the spot. It was dusk. The true meaning of her sanctuary was to provide shelter. Standing on the Janbei defense line, Chen Fan gazed into the distant sea at the horizon, his expression dazed as he smiled faintly. Only then did he feel that Fang Yu had truly sheltered many people. Many lived because of him. This feeling wasn't bad. In the Eternal Night continent, the rainy season was a time when smiles were hard to come by. Anyone who could laugh out loud during this season could basically be judged as having lost their mind. Yet at this moment, laughter was abundant on the Janbei defense line. Fang Yu's white bone members were riding African ships, distributing buckets of hot meals to everyone on the Janbei defense line. These 15 days of experience had greatly boosted everyone's mutual confidence. Subtly, many seemed to see hope, seemed to see that the Eternal Night continent could truly withstand the ghost nest invasion. Chen Fan stood on the city wall, smiling lightly. This batch of ghost nests had no intelligence, only knowing how to charge. The ghost nests couldn't even pass messages to other regions. Sometimes, he wondered, where did so many ghost nests come from? They couldn't just appear out of thin air, could they? He received another transmission from the Seven Elders, Chen Yuzhu. Just then, the Eternal Leaf Fall and the Yellow Spring Mouth defense line have had no ghost nest attacks in the 15 days since the rainy season began. We've already reported your situation upward. In a while, someone from the Eternal Leaf Hall might come to find you. Someone from the Eternal Leaf Hall might come looking for you. Chen Fan nodded lightly. He knew this matter. The rise of the propagation sect could not be concealed. He also took the opportunity to learn what the situation was on the Yanai continent's front lines. In fact, 5 days after the rainy season began, the Yellow Spring Pass defense line had already guessed what was happening. The force had truly held the river's north bank, and even built a defense line. They quickly reported this news upward. Now, on the 15th day after the rainy season began, a flying boat stepped above the Yellow Spring Pass defense line. Behind a scarred, bay-chested middle-aged man followed a figure in a black cloak, his face obscured. A stout man stepped down from the arcs. Is the information accurate? The man leading this operation walked straight to the Yellow Spring Pass defense line's commander. Gazing into the depths of the Guangxi Plain, he inquired. It's accurate, replied Chen Sheng, the Yellow Spring Pass commander. Now that 15 days of the rainy season have passed, the north bank of the river has yet to fall. Dud. The bay-chested middle-aged man closed his eyes tightly. He took a deep breath. He murmured softly, I hope this gives me a little surprise. The Yanai continent desperately needs a miracle. The next moment, the man worked toward the flying boat. The flying boat rose into the air, speeding toward the north bank defense line. As Yanai descended, an endless swarm of ghost nests once again emerged from the seabed, charging densely toward the north bank defense line. The north bank defense line, long accustomed to this, responded with ease. Chen Fan stood on the city wall, overlooking the scene. Prison Master Xiaoqiu appeared behind Chen Fan, reporting in a low voice, the station on the Guangxi Plain saw a flying boat heading toward the north bank before dark. It's not one of our propagation sect's flying boats. It should arrive at the north bank defense line in about an hour or two. Should we allow it to enter the propagation sect's territory? Chen Fan's face remained calm as he gazed into the distance at the ghost nests. No force on the Guangxi Plain has a flying boat. It seems it's from the Yellow Spring Pass defense line, or perhaps from the Yanai Hall's defense line. They've sent someone. Stay alert and keep watch. Don't stop them unless they make any unnecessary moves. Understood. Xiaoqiu nodded, his figure slowly fading away. Understanding, Xiaoqiu nodded, his figure slowly faded away. Over an hour later, the Yanai Hall's flying boat entered the airspace above the north bank, heading straight for Wuming Mountain, and slowly descended in altitude, entering the range of the propagation sect's ghost fire, hovering above the north bank defense line. As the surrounding darkness was dispelled by the ghost fire, the view instantly opened up. The bay-chested man standing on the deck narrowed his eyes. He saw a 6th-level city wall, 170 kilometers long, standing tall on the seabed of the north bank. The ghost nests had already landed, some repairing the walls, charging desperately at the north bank defense line, but all were beaten back by the fierce firepower of the north bank defense line. There really is an extra defense line here, not one built by our Yanai Hall. He watched for who knows how long before looking around. At some point, floating in the air, Surrounding him were dozens of flying boats, along with several anti-aircraft guns on the defense line that had already turned their barrels, aiming at him. He took a deep breath and shouted, Yanai Hall, Tianyi requests an audience, the ruler of this force. His voice was deafening, almost drowning out the roar of the cannons, resounding between heaven and earth. Soon, a flying boat stopped in front of him. On the deck, a man wearing the force's uniform looked at him. Follow me. The flying boat began to lead the way ahead. Before long, the flying boat under his feet was level with the North Bank defense line city wall. He stepped from the deck onto the city wall, gazing at Chen Fan, who stood at the wall's edge facing away from him, clasped his hands in a fist salute. He said calmly, Yanai Hall, Tianyi requests an audience. Hearing the voice behind him, Chen Fan slowly turned around, looking at this person sent by Yanai Hall. After a pause, he smiled lightly and said, North Bank, Fan Yu. Beside Chen Fan stood a massive, black-robed man, his face unclear. Greetings, Lord Fan Yu. The man bowed once more. After a few polite exchanges, he stated his purpose. I want to know where Fan Yu came from, and how so many ghost soldiers built this North Bank defense line. Chen Fan smiled. This is a core secret of the propagation sect, not convenient to discuss. Chen Fan refused to answer. The bay-chested man nodded with a heavy expression. In truth, he was just asking as a formality. 80% of Janbei's breeding, the city found an ancient ghost mine left behind. The quantity won't be too much either. After finishing the Janbei defense line, there shouldn't be much left. Most importantly, even if Janbei breeding really takes out 2 to 3 billion ghost stones to give him, it won't change the situation much. Knowing that Janbei breeding can rise so quickly, there must be something unique about it. The reason I came this time is partly to see if the Janbei line really exists. On the other hand, the Eternal Night Shop hopes to gain some support from you. If you have any to offer, what kind of support do you need? I don't know much about the Eternal Night Shop. Tell me what you need. We need everything. There's nothing the Eternal Night Shop doesn't need. Man Chensheng, for example, right at this moment, he suddenly caught a whiff of food aroma in the drizzling rain. His stomach couldn't help but growl. He instinctively turned his head to look behind, seeing the sunset city not far away. A huge canopy hung over the city, and below it, countless streams of steam shot into the sky. The scent of food drifted to the city wall, even overpowering the stench of the ghost nest's attack. What's that? Chen Fan raised an eyebrow, looking at Wang Kui beside him, asking what the strange insects were doing. Soon he got an answer, steamed ribs with fermented black beans. They were preparing meals for those withdrawing from the defense line after dawn. Steamed ribs with fermented black beans. This man, whose face was full of ruthlessness, suddenly froze in place. Somewhat dazed, he withdrew his gaze from Sunset City behind him, then looked at the crowd on the Janbei defense line. Are you having steamed ribs with fermented black beans today? Yesterday, it was steamed yellow croaker. What the hell? The man was completely stunned, as if he'd heard a ghost story. More shocked than seeing the Janbei defense line. You eat this well every day. It's alright. What do you eat on the Eternal Night front? We eat fried noodles. Just stir-fry flour and add water. For a moment, he even wanted to stay in the Janbei direction. Then I know what support breeding can provide for the Eternal Night Shop. Breeding might first offer food and root support to the Eternal Night Shop, but it needs some ghost food as payment. Chen Fan smiled. After all, laying roots consumes quite a bit of ghost food. The man frowned deeply. The Eternal Night Shop can't spare a single ghost food now, unless you can pick it up yourself. What does pick it up mean? It means going to the Eternal Night front line. The Eternal Night Shop has had many transport routes damaged. The remaining routes are very tight. Plus, with internal traders leaking information, it's hard to transport goods to other areas. But if you're going to the Eternal Night front line to pick up ghost food yourself, then there's no problem. As he spoke, he stared intently at the high-speed trains rushing along the base of the Janbei defense wall. He seemed to vaguely understand what Fan Yu meant by offering root support. Chen Fan walked to the side, into the small hut built on the Janbei County wall. It's raining hard outside. Let's talk inside. Inside the tea hut, Chen Fan poured the man a cup of tea. Tell me about your Eternal Night Shop's transport routes, and why the routes were damaged. Alright. The bare-armed man held the teacup with both hands, paused for a moment before beginning his story. It turned out that the core secret of the Eternal Night continent's survival was that beneath this continent lay a sleeping invisible great formation. The continuous mountain ranges along the coast were the manifestation of this formation's lines. Where there were mountains, the nodes were intact. Ghost nests could never cross the continuous mountains. It was this protection that kept the surging ghost tide at bay. Only where the continuous mountains were lost, were the formation's nodes shattered. Where the ghost nests tore through the defense line, only then was the surging ghost realm sealed off from the outside. The only place where the continuous mountain range was lost is where the grand formation's node shattered, is where the ghost nest tore open the defensive line. At this moment, The defensive line needs to be reinforced. In these areas where nodes have shattered, such as the Janbei defense line and line 7, then the man pulled out a ghost skin map from his bosom and spread it on the table, pointing to the regions where the formation patterns had fractured. He showed them to Chen Fan. Chen Fan looked at the ghost skin map and nodded. Leaning back in his chair, he gently rubbed his temples. Without speaking, he sank into thought. This conversation had given him a preliminary understanding of the layout of the Yunnan continent. Simply put, the Yunnan continent was now like a tattered garment, and their defense line's role was to patch up the holes, to mend those gaps. The continent was ragged and torn, and they were stitching it back together. That was the situation, and under these circumstances, the importance of supply routes was self-evident. But every time another defense line fell, it doubled the difficulty of transporting supplies. Once 3 or 4 regions were lost, it would snowball into a cascade of collapses, and within months, everything could be lost. Chen Fan mused. The obese man in a black cloak, sitting beside him, spoke softly. The night watchman, a stout man, nodded and let out a harsh sound from his throat, extremely grating to the ear, like scraping glass. I belong to the outer action group, the bay-chested man, Xianxia explained. One of the main duties of the Yunnain's outer action group is to crush those sparks that might ignite into a raging fire. So when we go out, we must be accompanied by a night watchman of at least level 20. The power unleashed when a level 20 night watchman self-destructs is enough to instantly clear all ghostly beings within a 20-kilometer gap. Moreover, a night watchman's self-destruction won't damage the defense line or harm humans. Chen Fan toyed with the glass figurine in his hand. This power is far greater than a level 6 heaven-piercing pillar. He even suspected it might surpass the power of a max-level heaven-piercing pillar. The obese man draped in a massive black cloak showed no reaction. This somewhat dehumanizing description didn't stir any emotion in him. Perhaps sensing Chen Fan's mood, the obese man rasped. Word by word, a night watchman's fate is to ignite. Chen Fan was momentarily stunned. He had heard this phrase before. Big Fish had once said it to him too. After a long silence, he stood up and looked at the bay-chested man. You've traveled far and worked hard. Let me first arrange a place for you two to rest. We'll discuss the specifics tomorrow. Oh, by the way, he glanced at the man's bare arm exposed outside his sleeve, hesitated, then asked, aren't you cold? And these scars? The man immediately laughed. I'm a special cultivator, a fire punishment body. Flames constantly spew from my organs. I fear heat, not cold. As for these scars, before he finished, a flame burst from the scars on his hand. The man skillfully slapped it out. See, like this, flames pop out from time to time, leaving these marks. Does it hurt? Chen Fan asked curiously. A little, but you get used to it. The man smiled. Members of the outer action group must possess the strength to hold off an entire ghost nest alone. But it's not activated lightly. Once it is, life is essentially over. Chen Fan said nothing. Then he instructed Wang Qi to take the two to Fan City and temporarily house them in an inn there. Meanwhile, Chen Fan sat alone at the table, gazing down at the ghost skin map the man had left behind. Lost in thought, he was pondering how to lay out a safe enough route through the defenses of Fan City. To reach Western Zone 1, a connection was established between the front line and the breeding ground. Soon dawn broke. As the thick darkness receded, amidst the drizzling rain, the pale sky of Yudu hung in the air. Shouts rang out continuously along the Janbei defense line. Those who had withdrawn from the line under orders, and those preparing to go out and gather, gradually assembled. They prepared to eat. On the wall of Janbei Fang County, Yanai Dian Tenny looked at the food on the table before him. His stomach could no longer hold back, and began to growl loudly. Somewhat embarrassed, he looked up at Chen Fan. Lord Chen Yu, I'll start eating first. Eat together, Chen Fan said with a chuckle. It's just some simple home-cooked meals. I'm sorry for the poor hospitality. It's more than enough. After taking a deep breath, Tanny immediately began wolfing down his food. Beside him, the obese man, the night watcher, made his first extra move. From time to time, he picked up a rib and placed it in his own bowl, and occasionally let out a sound. It was a sound of pain, like a terminal cancer patient eating, extremely agonizing. Chen Fan watched this scene in silence. The people of Yanai Dian were living harder than he had imagined, even worse than the Janbei Chen family had eaten before. After a moment, Tanny put down his bowl and said, Lord Chen Yu, there's one more thing. I have already reported the potential of the breeding ground to Yanai Dian, so I know that the construction of Janbei Feng County did not use any architects. Lord Chen Yu, you alone built a structure of this level. Even if Janbei falls, you, Lord Chen Yu, must not come to harm. So I told my master immediately. Rest assured. Tanny took a deep breath, his expression serious. This matter is crucial. I didn't dare use the normal reporting channels. I only told my master alone, and no one else. He holds a high position in Yanai Dian, so he will absolutely not leak the information. I still have matters to attend to, and need to go to the Yellow Spring Gorge to handle some things. I won't delay any longer. Keep this paired talisman well. It allows long-distance communication, a direct line to me. If anything comes up, I'll inform you immediately. With that, the two bid farewell and he gradually disappeared from sight, leaving decisively. Chen Fan, sitting in his chair, leaned back, charmed and silent. After a long while, he couldn't help but let out a soft laugh. Last night, he had already roughly figured out how to lay out the routes. Meanwhile, in a private room within the city, an old man with white hair looked dazed, drinking cup after cup of tea. After an unknown time, the old man then got up, closed the doors and windows, and activated a formation plate. From his storage ring, he took out a ghost talisman. As soon as the ghost talisman was taken out, it ignited without wind. The black smoke from the talisman hung in the air, refusing to disperse. In the blink of an eye, within the black smoke, a shadowy figure faintly emerged. This shadow seemed very pleased. Its voice, both near and far, echoed in the room. You finally contacted us. This is the most correct choice you've made in your life. As long as the intelligence you provide is important enough, after the Ghost Clan occupies the Yanai continent, we can guarantee your family wealth and honor, and grant you a strand of heavenly Dao blessing, extending your life by 100 years. The moment the shadow appeared, the daze in the old man's eyes instantly dissipated. He knew there was no turning back. Even if he said nothing now, once discovered, death would still be his fate. After a pause, he looked down at the incense burner on the tea table, and said in a low voice, Janbei has been defended. There is a force called Janbei Breeding Ground. Without any support from other powers, they built the Janbei defense line, a grade 6 line, and the leader of this force, Chen Fan, is a very powerful architect. He single-handedly built the Janbei defense line. He reported the information Tani had given him, truthfully and in full detail. The shadow let out a laugh in response. Soon it slowly dissipated, but the black smoke did not disperse. Instead, it rapidly condensed, and once again formed a ghost valley. Just then, a knock suddenly sounded at the door. The old man quickly put the ghost valley into his storage ring, closed the formation plate. Tunzing sat at the tea table. After clearing his throat, he said, Come in. Soon, a young man bustled in, somewhat flustered. His words were full of excitement. Elder Zhang, good news from the Eternal Night Western Front Line 1. They say they captured a blue-grade building blueprint. Let's send an architect over quickly to the Western Front Line 1 to comprehend the building blueprint. The old man didn't say much. He followed the young man out the door. But behind him, he glanced at the excited young man before him, and sighed inwardly. The higher you stand, the more you know. The less hope you hold for the future of the Eternal Night continent. Meanwhile, in the darkness, a ghost emperor sat on the throne in the Great Hall, looking down at the intelligence brought by the ghost servants on the floor. He was somewhat dazed and confused. He hadn't expected that in such an environment, there could still be a miracle among humans. A region on par with the Western Wasteland Island could still have a force rising up and single-handedly forge a Janbei defense line. All these years, they had tried their utmost to block the route between Eternal Night Electric Island and Western Wasteland Island, all to let Janbei fall, so that the ghost nest could land and invade the hinterland through the river gorge from the flank, threatening the Eternal Night continent's Western Front Line 1. Unexpectedly, it was still held by a force called Janbei Fanyu, but he had never heard of this force. He lowered his head to look at the map in his hand. After pondering for a long time, he tapped a few points in the map in fort. Then he ordered, pass down the command, have the ghost nests in the waters of Eternal Night Continent's Western Front Line 1. Smuggle a batch of ghost nests to the waters of the Huinquan Coastal Defense Line at maximum speed. At all costs, break into the Huinquan Mountain Range region, then enter the Huinquan Mountain Range region. Break through the Huinquan Pass defense line all the way west, from the hinterland of the Eternal Night continent, head to Janbei and destroy Fanyu. A male ghost kneeling in the Great Hall was stunned. As his words fell, he looked up at the ghost sitting on the throne. Your Majesty, this is shocking. Such an action will greatly deplete our strength, making it even harder for us to take front line 1. Is a single Fanyu worth such a heavy price? The ghost emperor sat on the throne. His expression was calm and cold. As long as no miracle occurs, the Eternal Night continent is doomed to lose. What we must do is to snuff out all those things that might become miracles. In the cradle, the ghost emperor slowly rose, walked behind the throne, looked at the couplet hanging on the wall. A faint smile curled at the corner of his mouth. He said softly, there is a tactic in human culture, called speed is the essence of war. Then let Janbei Fanyu experience what the ghost clan speed is the essence of war truly means. Understood. The male ghost kneeling on the ground said no more. He merely acknowledged and withdrew. The sky darkened once again. As Yanai descended, in the vast sea area before the 108-kilometer-long Eternal Night Continent Western Front Line 1, countless ghost nests surged from the seawater and began to charge at the defense line. Amidst the explosions ringing out across the sky, a new night of city defense had begun. But deep in the sea, huge waves of ghost tides gathered on the sea surface, neatly clustered together. The boundary lines were extremely clear. One of the large ghosts floating in the air tilted its head to look at the sea area to the north, empty of any ghost servants. With a cold expression, it ordered, "Head north." The massive ghost tide in the seawater obeyed the command. Swarming and surging, they swam northward through the sea. The next moment, boom, the ghost servant at the very front, as it stepped into that area empty of any ghost servants. Just then, a bolt of lightning suddenly struck without any warning, reducing this ghost, along with all the ghosts around it, to ashes. This ghostly creature, along with all the surrounding ghostly beings, was reduced to ashes. As more and more ghost nests flooded into this area, bolts of lightning rained down densely, the air thick with a rich scent of scorched flesh, the whole scene like a film shot in ashes, like an incredibly dense swarm crackling and popping, the sound unceasing in one's ears. Fearless of death, the ghost nests, completely ignoring the lightning bolts filling the sky, obeying orders, they continued northward. Though countless ghost huts perished under the thunder, yet a lucky few would cross this zone. After sprinting dozens of meters, the lightning above them ceased to drown the sky. 1 hour later, this vast horde of ghost nests finally fully crossed this death zone, but fewer than 1 in 10 survived. This great ghost hovering in the air watched the scene with some pain in its heart. How many troops had been wasted in vain. It gazed at the great ghost hovering across the death zone, in the air. This batch of ghost nests had successfully reached the Qiming Basin Sea area. Its mission was complete. The two great ghosts exchanged a glance across the void, nodded, understanding all, like passing a baton. In the Qiming Basin Sea area, the great ghost hovering in the air took this batch of ghost nests and continued racing northward across the sea surface. Before lying, they reached another area devoid of any ghost huts. Head north, advance. The great ghost issued the order again. Below, the ghost nest surged once more into this death zone. Heavenly lightning ceaselessly struck down those ghost nests that had narrowly passed the first death zone. Once again charged without hesitation into this death zone before them, submerged for half an hour. This batch of ghost nests crossed this death zone again, successfully reaching the Yellow Springs mountain range sea area. But again, fewer than 1 in 10 survived. A great ghost standing above the Yellow Springs mountain range sea area had successfully received this batch of ghost nests and exchanged a glance with the great ghost responsible for transporting them. One look, then nodded again in acknowledgement, requesting reinforcements. The 27-kilometer-long Yellow Springs coastal defense line suddenly erupted with piercing and enfiladating roars. The commander of the Yellow Springs coastal defense line shouted into the mother-child communicator in his hand. Tonight, the number of ghost nests has suddenly surged, requesting reinforcements. Under the night, nearly endless ghost nests emerged from the seabed, in a stance even more violent and rampant than before, surged toward the defense line. The turrets on the line fired almost desperately without cease, but still couldn't stop the growing number of ghost huts climbing over their comrades' corpses to charge the line. Just then, the command room on the line's city wall was suddenly smashed open by a ghost hut. Despair flashed in the eyes of the Yellow Springs coastal defense commander, a flicker of hopelessness. His voice trembling slightly, he shouted his last. The Yellow Springs coastal defense line has fallen. No need to send men here. Go reinforce the Yellow Springs pass defense line. Their target is. His voice cut off abruptly. This ghost with an enormous head opened its massive mouth lined with sharp teeth, dripping thick, foul liquid, and swallowed the man's head, along with the mother-child communicator in one gulp. All sections of the Yellow Springs coastal defense line were breached. More and more ghost nests climbed onto the city wall and gathered together. In the night and heavy rain, they pushed deep into the Yellow Springs mountain range region, charging toward the Yellow Springs Pass Gorge defense line. Their target was extremely clear: head to the Yellow Springs Pass defense line, breach the Yellow Springs Pass defense line and enter the Guanxi Plain, then head to Janbei quickly. The Yellow Springs Pass defense line, which had just received the news, was now in utter chaos. The area they had always defended was the Guanxi Plain. Now that their rear had fallen, they had to quickly adjust the turrets, which began rotating rapidly, aiming at the base of the Yellow Springs mountain range region. In the silent night, only within the ghost fire's range could the torrential rain be seen. Not a single ghost house was visible. The commander of the Yellow Spring Pass defense line was now anxious, uneasy. He kept shouting loudly into the child mother talisman in his hand. The commander of the Yellow Spring Pass defense line called out. The commander of the Yellow Spring coastal defense line repeated 3 times, but no one answered. Even though he had already received word that the Yellow Spring coastal defense line had fallen, he still clung to a sliver of hope and called out, "It's not our big problem." Just then, Eternal Night Heavenly One patted the commander on the shoulder. He said calmly, "The number of ghost nests in the Yellow Spring Sea isn't too great. To be able to destroy the Yellow Spring coastal defense line means the number of ghost nests is already not small. The Yellow Spring Pass defense line can hold. Besides, the two of us are here. The commander of the Yellow Spring Pass defense line, seeing Heavenly One and the fat man standing beside him, finally breathed a slight sigh of relief. He also knew he had lost his composure. This is my first time as defense line commander. I've never faced a ghost nest before. It's fine, Heavenly One said with a smile. You'll have experience next time. In the reincarnation tower panel, a line clearly appeared. When the first ghost rushed from the darkness into the ghost fire's range, then, endless ghost nests charged from the darkness, bursting into the ghost fire's range. Heavenly One's expression instantly changed drastically. The number of ghost nests in this wave is absolutely not what the Yellow Spring Pass Sea should have. Looking out, there are hundreds of ghost kings alone, and even several dozen greater ghosts. And this is merely the first wave of ghost nests charging into the ghost fire's range. This isn't the ghost nest intensity the Yellow Spring Pass Sea should have. In an instant, he understood what had happened. When reporting the breeding matter to his master had suddenly asked, was this news told only to me, or was it reported through normal channels, with extra information given to me? He had, for some reason, been cautious at the time, saying the news had already been reported through normal channels, with extra information given to his master. He had trusted his master completely in his heart. It was his master who had taken him in. It was his master who had brought him to join Eternal Night Hall. But when he saw this wave of ghost nests completely beyond what the Yellow Spring Pass Sea should have, charging here at such a terrifying speed, he knew his master had leaked the intelligence. These ghost nests hadn't even destroyed the cities along the way, showing their target was extremely clear: crush the Yellow Spring Pass defense line, enter the Guanxi Plain to destroy the breeding grounds. Master Heavenly One suddenly laughed bitterly, feeling a tightness in his chest, a suffocating pain. The raging fire that had been burning within him all along now blazed even more fiercely. He had never imagined his master would betray the Eternal Night Continent. Master, you were the one who wanted to win the most. He pulled out the Child Mother talisman from his chest, contacted his superior, and spoke, voice trembling, word by word. Eternal Night Hall, Heavenly One, reporting an important message. The Janbei breeding grounds have risen, building a level 6 defense line to guard Janbei, and the master of the Janbei breeding grounds is an architect of extremely formidable strength. Yesterday, I reported this news only to my master. He leaked the information. The ghost race spared no expense, sending ghost nests to sneak into the Yellow Spring Pass Sea. They have now broken through the Yellow Spring coastal defense line and are attacking the Yellow Spring Pass defense line. After reporting this news, he contacted Chen Fan again, speaking with some shame. Lord Chen Yu, the news has been leaked. My master is a traitor. The ghost race has sent a great army to attack the Yellow Spring Pass defense line. They are expected to break through soon. Please prepare the breeding grounds as quickly as possible. After seeing the intensity of this ghost nest wave, he knew the Yellow Spring Pass defense line couldn't hold. The Yellow Spring Pass defense line had been built not to deal with ghost nests of this intensity. This level of ghost nest intensity already far exceeded what the No. 7 defense line and the Janbei defense line faced. The next moment, more and more ghost nests had already charged into the ghost fire's range. The turrets along the Huangquan Pass defense line began firing non-stop. But faced with ghost nests of such number and intensity, they seemed barely able to hold their ground. Pu Tianyi slowly closed his eyes. Clutching a blade, he stood atop the wall of the Huangquan Pass defense line. When he opened his eyes again, boundless fury erupted like molten stone. Across the surface of his body, densely packed, countless cracks suddenly appeared, like a shattered porcelain doll. Star-red flames continuously burst forth from the fissures. Tianyi took a deep breath, gripping the great blade in his hands, and gazed down at the endless ghost nests below the line. He leaped into the air, his body wrapped in star-red flames like a shooting star, crushing into the ghost nests. All nearby ghost huts were instantly burned to nothing. His voice seething with rage, the high flame blade roared. Tianyi of the Eternal Night Hall is here. He gripped the great blade with both hands, roaring as he drove it into the ground. Flames blazed from his body, and the star-red fire surged instantly to the blade's tip, burrowing into the earth and vanishing. The star-red flames that had wrapped around Tianyi disappeared without a trace, like a candle suddenly snuffed out. But then, the entire world seemed to pause for a moment. The earth began to tremble faintly. In the next instant, countless fragments flew into the air. Nearly endless flames, like a volcanic eruption, shot forth from the depths of the earth, centered on Tianyi. The range was immense, clearing in almost an instant a vast expanse of the surrounding tide of destruction. Even a ghost king that drew near perished horribly under this single strike. One man slew a ghost king with one blow. Tianyi's face was deathly pale, drained of all color. He staggered as he stood on the ground, looking around. The area he had just cleared was filled again almost in the blink of an eye by an even greater number of ghost nests. Countless mad and savage ghost creatures, fearing neither life nor death, charged toward him. The stench of rot mixed with foul air hit him like a wave. Just then, the child mother stone in his bosom suddenly grew hot, and Chen Yuju's familiar, heavy voice came through. The source of proliferation is about to arrive. Hold on. He looked back at the Huanquan pass behind him, and suddenly let out a laugh. He tossed the blade in his hand, turned to face the endless ghost nests ahead, and licked the corner of his mouth. A trace of memory surfaced. The fermented black bean steamed spare ribs he had this morning. Truly delicious. At that moment, the ghost nests charging toward him began to blur. He vaguely recalled following his master, in his youth, betting for oranges, a warm and joyful scene. But now, there was no time. Chen Yuju, thank you for your hospitality. In the night, Tianyi stood amidst the lingering flames on the ground, his blade held horizontally as he stood in the storm. Like a statue, he stared straight at the nearest ghost tomb charging toward him. Vaguely, between the teeth of that wide-mouthed, roaring ghost hut, he saw a child mother stone. That must have been the one held by the person in charge when the Huanquan coastal defense line fell. Mu, I've avenged you, brother. The next moment, the cracks on Tianyi's body grew larger and larger, his entire frame nearly falling apart. More violent star-red flames burst forth from the gaps in his skin, from his eyes, nose, ears, and throat. He opened his mouth as wide as he could and roared, trying to vent the burning heat inside him. He had burned his whole life, this entire life, the star-red flames, tormenting him from within every moment. Today, he would burn even hotter. He laughed, and began to run. Endless ghost tides surged toward him. He charged straight into them. His pace grew faster and faster, until he was almost upon them. There was no trace of fear in his eyes. His eye sockets were filled with star-red flames. He leaped into the air. He raised the blade in his hand amid the storm and grinned. Even if a mayfly drifts into the sea, I will still burn the heavens with my blood. Seeing his sister burn the heavens, the blood within his body began to burn rapidly and continuously transformed into star-red flames. The flames grew more and more, surged wildly along the blade's tip, forming a blaze hundreds of jang tall. With barely a few strikes, he reduced that fang fiend, which had a mother-child stone stuck between its teeth, to ashes, along with the surrounding horde of fiends, all cleared in an instant. His steps did not pause for a moment. His target was solely the Ghost King. The second strike, in the rainy season of yore, struck the Ghost King that had posed a great danger to Fanyu, piercing through its chest and back, chilling it to the core. The third strike felled yet another Ghost King. Just as Tanny was about to charge forward again, a massive, ink-green hand shot out from the darkness and slammed fiercely toward Tanny. With that single blow, it sent Tanny flying into the high sky, tracing a parabolic arc through the air. He crashed heavily behind the defensive line, his fate unknown, alive or dead. In almost an instant, that nearly sky-covering star-red flame was extinguished completely. The owner of that ink-green giant hand in the ghost nest stood over 10 meters tall, within the ghost nest, staring ahead at the Huanquan defensive line. Roaring, this was a greater ghost, a fiend a tier stronger than a ghost king, absolutely not something mortal strength could withstand. This area, briefly cleared, had already been filled again by the ghost nest, and surged wildly toward the Huanquan line, launching another fearless charge of life and death in the yellow spring past defense line. The commander took in the entire scene, his eyes reddened as he rasped, called the line. The turrets on the defensive wall began firing at maximum power, bombarding the ghost nest below relentlessly. But as more and more ghost corpses piled up, the horde of ghosts drew closer and closer to the wall top. Before being sent flying by the greater ghost, Tenny used the mother-child stone to tell him that Fanyu's reinforcements would soon arrive. He didn't know how Fanyu to provide support in such a short time, but now, the only hope he could rely on was Fanyu. The Huanquan defensive line stretched dozens of kilometers. In his section, thanks to Tanny's outburst, the pressure had eased slightly, but other areas were on the verge of falling at any moment. The number and strength of this ghost nest had already far exceeded the capacity of the Huanquan line. The obese man in a black robe, who had been following behind Tanny, now moved lightly along the wall top, hurrying swiftly. His gaze finally settled on a figure wielding a sore hammer, who had strode to the front of the line, ready to swing the hammer down at a greater ghost. He suddenly stopped. The black robe draped over him fluttered without wind, falling away to reveal his true form. White energy flowed within his skin. This obese man stood in the storm, turned to look in the direction where Tanny had been sent flying by the greater ghost. After a single glance, he forced out a raspy, wind-broken voice from his throat. Night Watchman No. 97 activated. The man stepped into the air, leaving footprints as he worked out beyond the line. Hovering in midair, the white energy within his body began to churn and surge like boiling water, until, when cracks appeared across every inch of his skin, he slowly opened both arms, took one last look at the world between heaven and earth, pulled from his bosom a brown sugar bun that he had secretly taken from Fanyu, lifted the lump covering his mouth slightly, and forced it into his mouth, chewing with difficulty. A grating sound mixed with a hint of laughter. He murmured softly, "It's sweet. Finally, it won't hurt anymore." The next moment, a mournful green light burst forth like an aurora, blossoming instantly, and surging endlessly into the night. The 27-kilometer-long Huangquangqiu defensive line, a large section of the defensive line was shrouded in a gloomy green aurora. Everyone witnessed this scene. Wherever the gloomy green aurora passed, countless ghost nests and ghost kings fell one after another. Only the greater ghosts managed to escape disaster, but they were also severely wounded. Nearly all the ghost nests ahead were cleared in one fell swoop. The Yellow Spring Pass defensive line, which was on the verge of falling, held firm once again. This was the Eternal Night Hall's strategic weapon. After the Night Watchers underwent special modifications, not only was their power immense, but it caused no harm whatsoever to humans or structures. The only drawback was that the modified Night Watchers would endure excruciating pain for the rest of their lives. The greater the intensity of the modification, the stronger the pain they bore. Yet at the edge of the cleared area, a vast number of ghost nests once again surged endlessly from the eternal night, as if they were inexhaustible and impossible to kill. Those severely wounded greater ghosts roared and charged again, even more frenzied, even more enraged. The purpose of a strategic weapon is not to end the battle, but to buy a window of opportunity. If that window is not used to launch any countermeasures, then it's merely prolonging the struggle. Reinforcements from the breeding division arrived. Across the sky, 3 breeding cruise missiles carrying thunderbolts shrieked through the night at incredible speed, exuding a terrifying deterrent, and landed straight among the group of ghosts outside the Yellow Spring Pass defensive line. Suddenly, a thunderous explosion erupted in midair. Countless lightning serpents, like a god of thunder scrubbing the ground, surged wildly across the earth. The scent of scorched ozone filled the entire sky. The massive explosion resounded through heaven and earth. A large area was cleared, but soon, that cleared area, accompanied by the endless tide of ghosts surging from the night, was filled again. About 17 minutes later, across the sky, 3 breeding cruise missiles carrying the might of thunder once again tore through the night sky, racing in, and landed heavily among the ghost nests. Countless fragments of ghost bodies and gloomy green liquid bloomed in the air. The area was cleared again. The ghost nests in the night surged forth endlessly once more. 17 minutes later, 3 breeding cruise missiles arrived on schedule again. Behind the Yellow Spring Pass defensive line, life and death were unknown. Lying on the wasteland, Tanyi, the child in her arms, kept transmitting Chen Fan's urgent and heavy voice. Tanyi, report the frontline situation. Chanyi, but no one answered. The voice rang out lonely in the night. The breeding division's 100 fully equipped airships received the distress signal and immediately took off overnight, rushing toward the Yellow Spring Pass defensive line at top speed. But no matter how fast the airships were, by the time they reached the Yellow Spring Pass defensive line, it would already be 2 hours later. Standing on the deck of the airship, Chen Fan gazed at the semi-transparent panel before him, continuously marking points ahead of the Yellow Spring Pass defensive line. Each time he marked, the heaven-piercing pillar at the breeding port would launch 3 missiles to support the Yellow Spring Pass defensive line. The speed of the missiles was countless times faster than his airship, but he didn't know the frontline situation, so he could only blindly bombard. Every 6 to 7 minutes, he fired 3 shots. He quickly thought of something, and through a sound transmission talisman, he quickly contacted the 7 elders of Defense Line 7. Help me contact the person in charge of the Yellow Spring Pass defensive line. Tell me, what is the current situation at the Yellow Spring Pass defensive line? Understood. Soon, Chen Fan got in touch with the person in charge of the Yellow Spring Pass defensive line. This is Janbei Breeding Division. Tell me the current battle situation at the Yellow Spring Pass defensive line. Yes, the other party's voice was somewhat flustered and helpless. Changyi is dead. The Night Watchers have been activated. There's a batch of means I don't recognize falling from the sky, killing quite a few ghost nests. Those are the breeding division's cruise missiles, but their numbers are limited. You are now responsible for reporting intelligence to me. When you deem support necessary, I will launch the reproduction cruise missiles again. The interval between launches will be roughly 37 cycles. Calculate your lead time yourself. In about 2 hours, 100 reproduction vessels will reach the Yellow Spring Pass route. Hold on. He didn't explain much. Over at the ship communicator, a confirmation of receipt soon came through. He held his breath and listened patiently. Chen Fan stood on the deck of the vessel, gazing ahead. The darkness receded on both sides. He remained expressionless and silent, not speaking for a long time. This batch of ghost nests was aimed at him. The ghost clan was too cautious and too decisive. He had already concealed much of his strength. The power he revealed to the outside world was merely a single defense line north of the river. Yet even so, the moment the ghost clan learned of it, they still attacked with thunderous force, seeking to destroy him. So many ghost nests suddenly appeared at the Yellow Spring Pass defense line. The price the ghost clan paid must not have been small. After about the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, from the ship communicator, came the voice of the Yellow Spring Pass defense line commander. Chen Fan did not pause. once again, and the translucent map before him, he lightly tapped 3 times. Near the reproduction port, hundreds of sky-piercing pillars stood on the ground. 3 of those max-level sky-piercing pillars began to tremble continuously. Their outer shells cracked, revealing the slender, miniature sky-piercing pillars inside. They slowly rose into the air, turned direction, and shot toward the Yellow Spring Pass defense line. Finally, after Chen Fan had launched a total of 54 max-level sky-piercing pillars, the voice of the Yellow Spring Pass defense line commander reached his ears. The ghost nests are gone. Chen Fan breathed a sigh of relief. The Yellow Spring Pass defense line had held. Though the cost was great, Chen Yi had died. The Night Watchman had activated reproductions, total of 98 max-level sky-piercing pillars for defense. 55 had been consumed. But in the end, the line was held. If the Yellow Spring Pass defense line had shattered, it would have posed a great threat to reproduction. He couldn't possibly build a defense line, cross both the north and south of the river. That defense line would be far too long. Reproduction simply didn't have enough ghost stones. Then we found Tanyi. He wasn't dead yet. He still had some breath, but he was on the verge of death. I used the altar to temporarily keep him alive. I'll be there soon. 2 hours later, 100 fully equipped vessels arrived at the Yellow Spring Pass defense line. This was Chen Fan's first time at the Yellow Spring Pass defense line. When the vessel was level with the city wall, Chen Fan stepped onto the wall. At a glance, he saw the scene beyond the defense line. The ground was almost leveled flat. The air was thick with the smell of burning and blood, mixed together. Countless ghost nest fragments, mixed with ghost stones, were scattered outside the defense line. I'm the defense line commander. A middle-aged man strode forward to meet him urgently. Take me to see Tanyi. The man quickly led the way. Soon, Chen Fan, inside an altar tower set up on the city wall, saw Tanyi with his eyes tightly shut. He was lying in the altar, his body covered in cracks. Within the cracks, faint traces of star-red flames flowed out. He didn't know how to heal. For a moment, he was at a loss as to what to do. But when he learned of this news, he had already sent a vessel to fetch someone who might have a solution. About the time it takes to burn a stick of incense later, a vessel shot out from the darkness, stopping at the edge of the city wall. The Valley Master of the Medicine King Valley, along with a group of elders, rushed down from the vessel quickly. They came to Tanyi's side, carefully and swiftly examining him. Soon, the Valley Master of the Medicine King Valley stood up and gave his verdict. Chen Yuzhu. This person must have used a special secret technique, bursting all the blood vessels in his body, and burning his blood to ashes, unleashing extremely powerful strength. This is a death-defying secret technique. It cannot be stopped. But the jade pendant hanging around this person's neck, concealed within its inner layer, was a rare prodigy, a terrestrial treasure of the evil lineage, which happened to neutralize some of that violent star-red flame, sparing his life. Yet his blood vessels were already sparse and fractured. Now he was merely clinging to a thread of breath. If he had a life tablet in the Eternal Night Hall, by now that tablet would have shattered. Even if placed on an altar, he could live at most 3 more days. However, there might be a method to save him. But the Valley Master of Medicine King Valley hesitated to speak. Speak freely, Chen Fan said calmly, his voice soft. The Medicine King Valley Master took a deep breath and gritted out. First, we must rebuild his blood vessels. But the human vascular system is extremely complex. No one can achieve this now, unless we plant a ghost blood flower inside him. Let its roots spread throughout his body to replace the blood vessels. Then plant him in a thorny stone field to make the ghost blood flower grow rapidly. After that, refine a blood pill for him to stimulate blood regeneration. After months of care, there's a theoretical chance he might live. Wei Chaoqiu, standing nearby, frowned deeply. Chen Cheng said, I recall the Medicine King Valley is a righteous sect, not some demonic cult or evil faction. This ghost blood flower is an extremely rare method of torturing and controlling people. Planting the ghost blood flower inside a person, its roots grow through the blood vessels, extremely agonizing. When fully grown, it bears a single fruit. Crush that fruit, and the person will bleed from 7 orifices, dying on the spot. And that blood pill is a pill refined from the blood of living beings by fallen cultivators, used to rapidly boost cultivation. These are all crooked paths, and you'd use them to heal. What crooked path? If it can save a life, it's a good path. The Medicine King Valley Master had lacked confidence at first, but hearing someone question his expertise, he couldn't help retorting. But as I understand it, refining a blood pill requires a vast amount of mortal blood. How many people do you plan to slaughter for 1 pill? Chao Qiu knew he shouldn't speak now, but he truly couldn't stomach the slaughter of mortals. The Medicine King Valley Master shook his head and said, our entire Medicine King Valley, each member voluntarily donates a little blood. That's enough to refine a batch of blood pills. Chao Qiu froze in the spot, his mouth opening and closing slightly, stunned for a moment. How had he never thought that this method could be used to refine blood pills? Well, it does seem feasible. Proceed with your method, Chen Fan said. Take him back to Jianbei Fan Yu, Western Sun City. You personally oversee his treatment. If he survives, you'll be rewarded. The Medicine King Valamasta nodded firmly. That night, a flying vessel set off urgently, carrying the Medicine King Vala group, and Tanyi, gravely wounded and near death, rushing back to find you. Chen Fan stood on the wall of the Yellow Spring Pass defense line, listening to the Yellow Spring Pass defense line commander explain the situation. Chen Fan, he looked toward where the black-robed night watcher had self-destructed. The ground still bore traces of soil, saying a dark green. He hadn't witnessed that scene, but from the commander's account, he could roughly imagine it. For some reason, he always felt this was too cruel for the night watchers. A night watcher's fate shouldn't be to detonate. No one wishes their only destiny from birth is to self-destruct. After roughly understanding the situation, Chen Fan, he turned to the Yellow Spring Pass defense line commander. He said calmly, I'll help you make some simple improvements to the Yellow Spring Pass defense line to strengthen its defenses. But don't report this. If you do, the next ghost nest that comes might be even larger. The Yellow Spring Pass defense line commander nodded in understanding. He had already grasped the situation. Then the other side, soon after this ghost nest was completely annihilated. To the west of Eternal Night, beyond the frontline waters of Xuanwu Sector 1, that ghost king, his face darkened, sitting alone on the throne in the Great Hall. This failure meant that for a short time, he certainly couldn't dispatch troops to Fanyu again. But if he simply let Fanyu develop unchecked, though, the possibility of it rising to affect the entire war situation was extremely small. Still, it was an unstable factor after all. Let's report it first, let the higher-ups decide. After a moment, the sky gradually brightened. Another night had ended. Damn it, deep within the heart of the eternal night, inside a city built on a plain, just as an old man was reporting to his superior, the ghost clan suddenly contacted him on their own. It startled him, almost exposing him. Just then, the door of his room was violently shattered, and a huge explosion rang out. Too. The old man's expression remained unchanged as he looked toward the door, his face solemn. He raised his voice. This is the Western Strategy Hall of the Eternal Night Palace, the private residence of Deputy Hall Master Zhang Yide. Who dares to break in? The next moment, the door was smashed open. Over a dozen men in black robes, with veiled faces, surged in, entering the room, and surrounding the old man. Then, an old man leaning on a staff slowly walked inside, came before the elder, and shook the token in his hand. He said softly, Do I need to introduce myself? Qiu Yisi, leader of the Eternal Night Palace's Western Field Operations team. By order of the higher-ups, I am here to arrest Zhang Yide, the traitor of the Eternal Night Continent. Will you surrender willingly? Or must we use force? Zhang Yide stood still, his expression shifting between gloom and uncertainty. After a long while, his originally tense body suddenly slumped, and he let out a bitter smile. Tianyi only told me about the Nei's intelligence. Yes. Qiu Yisi slowly worked up to Zhang Yide, and said calmly, Tianyi believed the Nei's intelligence was quite important. Recently, the Eternal Night Palace has often produced traitors. To be safe, he dared not report through normal channels to his superiors. He hoped that you, as his master, report the news, but clearly, he trusted you, his master, a little too much. Thanks to you, the Ghost Clan paid a heavy price after receiving the news. The coastal defense line of Yizai Huanquan fell that very night. Nearly 100,000 people died because of you. The ghost nest broke into the Huanquan mountain range, reaching the Huanquan Pass defense line. Your disciple Tianyi, along with the Eternal Night Palace's Western Field Operations team and the Night Watchman, 97 died in the ghost nest. Fanyu provided timely support. The Huanquan Pass defense line has not yet fallen. The ghost nest was destroyed. Is this the ending you wanted? Zhang Yide's eyes were bloodshot, and the verge of mental collapse. He roared. I didn't mean to kill Tianyi. I didn't know he would stay at the Huanquan Pass defense line. He reported to me the day before yesterday, saying that after leaving Fanyu, he would head to the Tankin Mountains. I only passed this one piece of information to the Ghost Clan. I just wanted to leave myself a way out. There is no way out. Qiu Yisi stepped closer again. Zhang Yide, both hands gripping his dragon-headed staff, said slowly, Between the Eternal Night Continent and the Ghost Clan, only one side can survive. This is a war with no retreat. Those who betray the Eternal Night Continent must be executed. But death is a complicated matter. To operate with us tonight, send intelligence to the Ghost Clan. Say that the Western Plain defense line of the Eternal Night Continent has sent many people to reinforce Janbei Fanyu. 3-star Fanyu has been attacked again. Tonight, the Western Plain defense line of the Eternal Night Continent is on demand. The Ghost Clan can launch a major offensive against the Western Plain reinforcements. If you cooperate well, I can grant you a quick death. Zhang Yide's face shifted between light and shadow. After barely hesitating, his eyes turned red, and he nodded heavily. All right, Qiu Yisi laughed, patting Zhang Yide's shoulder. No need to put on this act of regret. If you hadn't been caught, you wouldn't be regretting it. People only regret when they're about to die. This matter is definitely a death sentence, but at least I can do something decent before I die. When I go down and meet Tani, I won't be completely unable to hold my head up in front of her. Meanwhile, the 100 ships of Africa have already returned to Fanyu. Chen Fan stood on the deck of the A-ship. He looked toward the Jiangbei defense line rapidly approaching in the distance. He had already completed the basic modifications to the Huanquanqiu defense line. If he were to ambush again now, he could at least hold out a little longer, waiting for Fanyu's reinforcements. Meanwhile, in Fanyu's Xiang city at Wangu, a group of people were urgently treating Tani, though there was no absolute certainty. If the method truly worked as expected, then in 7 days, Tani would be fully healed. Thus, 5 days passed. There were still about 10 days until the rainy season ended. The darkness had just receded not long ago, and the sky had not yet fully brightened. The Eternal Night Hall sent someone again. A ship from Africa slowly sailed into Fanyu's territory, arriving near the Jiangbei defense line. This time the leader was an old man who looked somewhat aged. He stepped out of the African ship and onto the city wall of the Jiangbei defense line, and saw Chen Fan holding the jade hand scroll with both hands. He paused slightly in surprise, then smiled and said, "Young and accomplished. Young and accomplished indeed. Let me introduce myself. Leader of the Eternal Night Hall's Western External Action Team, Qiu Yisi. I came specifically to apologize for the leak of information that nearly caused Fanyu to be destroyed." Yan Bar, Qiu Yisi held the hand scroll horizontally across his body, slowly bowing. "I dare not." Chen Fan, who had been standing still, quickly stepped forward and helped up the man who looked old enough to be his grandfather. Chen Fan said, "This matter was an accident. I do not blame the Eternal Night Hall. Jiangbei Fanyu." He knew the Eternal Night Hall would definitely send someone to contact him, Chen Fan, but he hadn't expected them to dispatch someone of such high status. The leader of the Eternal Night Hall's Western Action Team. After a few casual remarks, he got to the point. "You also note that this time it was that person who leaked your information, namely Tani's master, the Eternal Night Hall's Western Strategy Deputy Hall Master, Zheng Yide. He has been dealt with according to the rules. The front line closest to you, the Eternal Night Western Xuanwu No. 1, has been executed. There are quite a few traitors on the front lines. Catching traitors is the action team's job, but investigating them is extremely difficult. The Eternal Night Hall doesn't have enough manpower. Moreover, according to Tani's intelligence, you are an extremely powerful architect, even surpassing the Heavenly Master and the Architect Master ranking above them. The Eternal Night Hall's Western Strategy Hall Master, upon learning this news, wishes to protect you and ensure you safely reach the core area of the Eternal Night Hall under tight security. As for the Jiangbei defense line, the Eternal Night Hall will send personnel to take over. What do you think, Lord Chen Yu?" Chen Fan was silent for a long time, then looked into the distance in the direction Qiu Yisi had indicated. Shaking his head, he said softly, "I was born in Jiangbei, grew up in Jiangbei, and after death, I will be buried in Jiangbei. Jiangbei is my home, and it is also Fanyu's territory. I will not leave Jiangbei." Qiu Yisi did not press further, merely nodding. He smiled and said, "That's normal." The Hall Master anticipated this. Many rising powers in the Eternal Night continent are like this. They guard their own territory, preferring to deal with ghost nests daily, rather than be protected. However, you need to join the Eternal Night Hall in name. That way, whether Fanyu rises again in the future, or suddenly gains some new opportunity, the Eternal Night Hall will announce to the outside world that it was the Eternal Night Hall's support. Chen Fan was momentarily stunned. Chen Fan turned his head to look at Qiu Yisi. "What?" Qiu Yisi laughed. "You don't think the Eternal Night continent is entirely propped up by the Eternal Night Hall, do you? How capable would the Eternal Night Hall have to be for that?" He paused for a moment before continuing. "This is a secret of the Eternal Night Pavilion. Don't speak of it to outsiders. In the Eternal Night continent, there are quite a few forces like Fanyu, who suddenly discovered the rise of ghost mines, or perhaps some force that suddenly gave birth to a genius architect, naturally exceptionally skilled at comprehending architectural blueprints, and so on. Although these rising forces are few in number, they are full of potential. Most will build defensive lines to secure their own regions. And where did their ghost stone buildings come from? Publicly, they claim it's all supported by the Eternal Night Hall. In truth, most of it is their own. It has to be this way. You've only just begun to rise now, and already the main force of the Ghost Clan has sent out a large number of ghost nests, smuggling their way here to find you. Do you know how much they paid for this smuggling operation? They crossed 2 regions, paying an enormous price. Only 1 in 100 survives. 1 in 100. Qiu Yisi gazed into the distant sky, murmuring, "The massive ghost tide you saw, that's just 1% of the actual ghost tide. 99% of the ghost tide was wiped out by the Great Tremor Thunder diagram while crossing the smuggling zone. If you rise again in the future, guess what the main Ghost Clan force at the Xuanwu No. 1 front line in the Western Eternal Night will do. But once you nominally join the Eternal Night Hall, then all your future rises can be publicly declared as support from the Eternal Night Hall. Although they will still take notice of you, at least they'll let their guard down a bit. Alright. Chen Fan nodded in agreement. Qiu Yisi laughed heartily. He really liked this young man before him. He didn't torque much but quickly grasped his meaning. He also didn't resist much against joining the Eternal Night Pavilion. As for your emotions, you don't need to worry. The Eternal Night Hall will take a portion from Fanyu's ghost mines. The Eternal Night Hall is mainly responsible for guarding the front lines. The victory or defeat of this war ultimately doesn't depend on the Eternal Night Hall, but on those forces that gradually rise under the protection of the Eternal Night Hall. And when these forces finally converge, they can resist the new forces of the Ghost Clan, until these new forces replace the Eternal Night Hall, continuing to shelter other rising forces, passing it down generation after generation. As long as we can hold the line, one day we will launch a counterattack against the Ghost Clan. And although I know that Fanyu's opportunity is definitely not a ghost mine, Chen Fan's eyes narrowed slightly. Qiu Yisi spread his hands helplessly. You all seem to have made a pact. Every rising force publicly claims to have discovered a ghost mine. It's not like everyone on the Eternal Night continent has died off in recent years. How many ghost mines could be buried underground, left undiscovered for so long, only to be found by you all? You just happened to discover these.